ZAMFARA is a state in northwestern Nigeria. The state has 14 local governments with its state capital in Gusau. The population of ZAMFARA state is estimated at about 4.5 million inhabitants based on the 2006 population census, with an annual growth rate of 3.2%. The state has an average family size of 8, majority of which are dependents. ZAMFARA state is predominantly an agrarian state with a small economy. This defines the poverty profile of the state. The economic challenges of the state have been exacerbated lately by the fragility imposed by armed conflict and violence that has created emergency situations of shocks and threats, thereby increasing the vulnerability index of the state. This singular factor has removed the source of livelihood for many in the state, throwing them into poverty and making thousands of households vulnerable. The National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) report 2019 on poverty and equality in Nigeria shows that 73.98% of the ZAMFARA population are poor and vulnerable. This unsavory scenario continues to impact negatively on the development of the state, a situation that has prompted the state to take actions and institute social protection programs to reverse the ugly trend of individual and household poverty and bring about improvements in the lives of the state's poorest and most deprived households.
The level of poverty in ZAMFARA is so high, and we are facing many challenges, like of this banditry, the display all our peoples, and they distract them, leaving their homes. They are living homeless. They have nothing to do, and they are facing many challenges.
Hunger and poverty is very, very high, and is very prevalent to the rural dwellers, affecting most the female-headed household.
The business of government is to provide social amenities, service delivery in general in terms of health, education and things. But it's not all the time, and it's not everybody in the state or the community that is fully covered. No matter how much programs are done, there are segments of society that, because of the issue of education, because of the issue of capital and a lot of things like that, they just cannot meet up with other people in the society. So these marginalized people is who is the segment covered in the provision, mostly covered in the provision of social welfare.
All over the world, social protection has risen to become a key policy measure on the agenda of the government to bring succor to the poor and vulnerable citizens.
Social protection is a relatively new concept. But if we look back, social protection has existed in Nigeria as far back as Nigeria has existed. MAMSA was social protection. Better Life for Rural Women was social protection. The Green Revolution was social protection. All of these are social protection, but they were all targeted at people across various phases of the life cycle. Absolutely anybody may get to a situation whereby they need the state to play its responsibility to the citizens, what sociologists or other people will call the social contract that the state has with its citizens.
Social protection is therefore defined as a mix of policies and programs designed for individuals and households throughout the life cycle to prevent and reduce poverty and socioeconomic shocks by promoting and enhancing livelihoods and a life of dignity.
Social protection has been proven to work in several parts of the world where it has been implemented in South Africa, in Brazil, for example, to help lift people out of poverty. And so it was felt that, it's time for people to begin to get some kind of support, some kind of safety net that allows them to live a life of dignity.
In Nigeria, the government has introduced several social protection programs to address poverty and help reduce the high rate of unemployment in the country. These include the National Homegrown School Feeding Program, the National Cash Transfer Program, and the Graduate Empowerment Scheme and Job Creation Project, NPAR, as well as the Government Enterprise and Empowerment Program.
The National Social Safety Net Coordinating Office is a key partner. The National Cash Transfer Program is a key partner as well, implementing social protection programs. CDGP is basically using the expertise that we acquired over the 7 or so years we implemented the cash transfers in Jigawa and ZAMFARA to help strengthen the National Cash Transfer Program.
To replicate the efforts of government at the federal level to reduce poverty among the populace, governments at state levels are embracing social protection programs to alleviate the hardship faced by the poor and vulnerable, especially those made worse by the COVID-19 pandemic.
What government did was to provide SUCO by way of providing economic activities, by way of providing money and tax relief to victims, to people in the state, across the state. You are aware the country was virtually in a lockdown for several months. So that affected people, their incomes, the businesses and things like that. So government did that. Firstly, government came with a lot of tax relief to address that end. Again, a number of people were given some money across the state. I think up to now, since that time, government has been spending a minimum of 180 million. We have local governments contributing 33 million for this to address issues of COVID-19.
Social protection has long stayed with us, even though uncoordinated. But what we can now say we can record as an achievement in the state is the establishment of so many agencies that coordinates social protection.
We were doing social protection in fragments.
But a key issue that you should note was that most of these were fragmented and piecemeal. So there was no specific attempt to bring them together or to create linkages. And for most of them, they became like one-off programs. So it's implemented. After it's done, maybe there's a transition government, the program goes quiet and nothing follows on to that.
What we quickly do is to do a very good advocacy to the state government for them to see the need of having a social protection policy for the state, which of course we have a very good, we're able to generate that political will, and then the state government asked us and they are willing to have that social protection policy.
When the Save the Children came, we conducted a needs assessment of the state vis-a-vis social protection and how things should be done properly. There was that need to come together, solidify the process of social protection, as it were, by way of designing a policy, even the ministries, enhancing the ministries, as well as provision of trainings and a lot of things like that.
To this end, Zamfara State, as one of the CDGP2 focal states alongside Kano, Kaduna and Jigawa, is piloting social protection programs and policies in the state to ensure citizens of the state have access to basic needs of life as a right.
In a lot of countries, it's enshrined in their constitutions. The right to water, the right to a decent standard of living, the right to food, good quality education. People have a right to a decent life. People can eat, they can attain their full potential. They don't have to bankrupt themselves if they fall ill.
By and large, what social protection does, or what it is to provide some measure of comfort or alleviation for people who are affected by issues of vulnerability, if you like. People who are poor and vulnerable, who do not have.
This intervention program will build resilience so as to enable these poor and vulnerable to be able to absorb shock and risks. In case of any shock that will come around, at least that social protection will prevent them.
The CDGP2 is working to strengthen the demand and supply sides of social protection services. This way, citizens are able to understand and seek social protection services from the government. Similarly, the government is able to understand the demands from the citizens and provide such services to reduce poverty in the state, especially among the poor and vulnerable.
As a program, I feel there was a significant contribution in increasing awareness, understanding, and also support. You know, social protection is a difficult area. So most people will tell you it's a waste of resources, maybe it makes people lazy, it's not an economic investment. So for a long time also, in most states, it was not a priority. So by increasing that understanding, awareness, there was also an increase in support. So I think that was a very powerful impact. And that led now to states starting to engage into social protection and starting to think about long-term strategies and plans for implementing programs.
Since 2013, with funding from the UK's Department for International Development, DFID, Save the Children, along with Action Against Hunger, have been at the forefront of supporting Nigerian federal and state governments to develop evidence on nutrition-sensitive social protection and to establish effective social protection schemes and systems. Initially implemented as pilot maternal and child cash transfer program 2013 to 2019,
Nigeria has some of the poorest health and nutrition indices. Jigawa State had very bad stunting rates, and same with ZAMFARA. So the CDGPD program then was part of the then DFID's approach to supporting the Nigerian government to improve uptake of optimal nutritional behaviors and practices in the state.
That was the initial phase 1 of the project. And mothers were provided with a stipend of about 3,000 naira, and later it was increased to around 4,000 naira every month, while they had the liberty to spend the money as they wanted. We also provided them with education to let them understand the importance of proper nutrition to themselves and their children.
So when the program came in, there was that dual focus. So the heavy focus was on addressing malnutrition using social protection, but also trying to create that awareness and build that momentum to allow the states to now invest into their own social protection programs.
We realized that after 6 years of implementing that program, a number of women had started livelihood activities which they didn't have before. And that wasn't part of the initial design of the program. It was something that as time went by and they started saving, they realized that they could use that money to enhance their own livelihood by engaging in productive activities like rearing animals, buying grinding machines, and so on.
As a result of the output and the immediate outcomes of the first CDGP program, it is realized that there is need actually to follow up, to see clearly what are the outcomes. And I think the second phase to also look at the area about strengthening the capacities for ensuring sustainability.
Because of the impact that the program has made, that is what has led to the second phase of the program.
And so with the support of FCDO, we moved on to Kano and Kaduna, and we started to engage more collaboratively with the National Social Investment Office that has now transited into the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development.
With support of the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office FCDO through CDGP Phase 2, Zamfara State is working to lift a sizable number of poor residents out of poverty by 2030 in line with Sustainable Development Goals SDGs. The state has taken deliberate steps to provide support for the poor and vulnerable households, to strengthen their resilience to economic shocks and ensure everyone is able to access income that provides security throughout a lifetime.
There is, a large scaling up social protection activities globally. So in line with the support we had from the CDGP program, the state government is pushing toward having a state social protection policy. And because there was national policy, so what we did, we were supported by the Save the Children International to develop, to domesticate our own policy. And what it does simply is not to create a new implementing structure, but what it does is simply to coordinate, because in existence we have quite a number of social protection policies, uncoordinated, and they do not clearly spell out the goals, so creating a lot of problem of implementation. So the policy has actually, bring them coherently together and come up with, the implementation framework that these things are coordinated to ensure synergy.
So we've seen the institutions improve. So the policies being set up, the legislation being drafted, and programs being introduced. So this just shows us that social protection has gone up the ladder of government prioritization of programs.
The state is working with the CDGP to help increase public awareness on social protection, with great emphasis on inclusiveness, which gives special attention to children, women, elderly, and persons with disability.
Inclusion is important because no one wants to be left behind. We all want to feel like a part of the society. We all want to have a sense of responsibility.
People with disabilities have been benefiting from the social protection program. It's the only point that we have always been advocating is for a certain number of persons with disabilities, instead of just waiting for them to come, but a certain number should also be allocated to them.
The CDGP program in Zamfara State is also providing technical support to institutions and systems that are necessary for gender and disability inclusion, as well as accountable social protection. This is to enable timely and appropriate response to citizens' needs when in shocks. This includes technical capacity building among civil servants, civil societies, and state actors to ensure increased knowledge and the provision of focused technical support on areas such as reporting and monitoring mechanisms and ways to create physical space for increased investment in social protection.
They are around to support the capacities, to ensure that we sustain and we scale up the program, and also to look around what are the clear outcomes, and even to see are there impacts.
For the first time, it's clearly spelled out that this program also belongs to them. So what we need to do now is to continue as watchdogs to see if eventually how the program is going to be.
For the first time, we have a social protection policy in the state, which is guiding the affairs of the delivery of social protection, unlike what we had in the past, where things were done in fragments without any meaningful purpose or objective as to where you want to. It's just, then it was a kind of a fire brigade. You see a problem, you address it. But now we have an objective of where we want to be and how much we need to deliver for the state.
Major programs that are very pronounced on social protections are the CDGP program under the Save the Children. Because I can vividly tell you that we have master trainers in the state. They were first trained by CDGP under Save the Children on social protection. And I am one of the beneficiaries of social protection training in Nigeria, where I'm a master trainer on social protection. It is only when you have the capacity before you can now translate it into having the document in place. So CDGP, with their own wisdom, first identify the capacity of people to be built and enroll them into developing that policy.
With the help of Save the Children and other agencies that have been in the state, we try also to have some capacity building in terms of monitoring and evaluation, and also ICT for the biometrics. This is just to ensure that there is accountability.
So, and also we're able to also build the capacity of the stakeholders the ministries and MDS also to be able to implement the social protection programs that is within their ministries and MDS effectively.
Most members of the legislation are part of the people that were trained on social protection. So that makes it easier for its passage before the floor of the House. So CCGP did its work very well, adequately, such that at least we have smooth running of these programs adequately.
To this end, the government of Zamfara, with support from CDGP, introduced social protection policy, which reflects the state government's commitment to inclusive governance that leaves no one behind, regardless of culture, ethnic, religious or partisan affiliations, but provides equal opportunity for residents to live productive and dignified lives. The policy intends to communicate to the public the direction of social investment efforts as proposed by government. It also amplifies the commitment of the state to ending extreme poverty and reducing the widening gap between the haves and the have-not. Every day, the plight of the poor and vulnerable in the society calls for an urgent response that is both innovative and proactive by building systems of social protection with the capacity to adequately prevent or at least mitigate more of the citizens falling into poverty.
You look at all the development indicators, you find that Zamfara is really disadvantaged. So, so that necessitates, our resolve to pursue these social protection programs, and we are committed to such programs because we believe in the underlying principle that the social protection support.
The state is, however, working on successful models of quick service delivery to transform the society without disengagement with its religious traditional root. This explains the resurgence of appeals for the revival of earlier programs like ZAMFARA that addressed poverty and vulnerability in the state.
Since 2000, we have established Zamfara State Comprehensive Agricultural Program, which is ZAMFARA. Is one of the key implementing agencies saddled with the responsibility of social protection in terms of agricultural revolution, where palm inputs, palm machineries, fertilizer, and other chemicals are being given to farmers, target farmers including women, Farmers Association in the state. We have Zamfara State Poverty Alleviation, which is ZAPA since 2005. We have many other agencies that are saddled with the support and enhancement of the activities of social protection.
The Zamfara state government has also provided special education for persons with special needs. These activities are also visible in the areas of health services provision, social welfare, skills acquisition, and girl-child education. The state is working to ensure that poor and vulnerable citizens have access to minimum healthcare package benefits, including maternity benefits.
For a state contributory healthcare scheme, which is a mandatory NHIS scheme for the state, take-up contribution made by the public civil servant has started going, and they have launched the vulnerable and excluded group contributions, which all the local governments on the state have obliged to make their contributions in favor of the people that are excluded and vulnerable within the society, so that they will form part of the beneficiaries.
We have done a lot in terms of cash transfer. We have distributed money to the victims of insurgency, most especially widows.
We do have the numbers, we have records of how much we have invested, we have records of how many people we have even intervened on.
So it has really generated a lot of evidence to suggest that if you give cash grants to these women, it's one of the effective and efficient way of actually improving the general well-being of the society. And for us as economists, we look at that as an investment.
It's a federal government intervention program, but tremendously ZAMFARA State, we are having the highest number of beneficiaries. We are having 138,000 beneficiaries that are enjoying the cash transfer program in the whole country. Check. Because of the poverty ranking that we are.
One of the key functions of social protection is creating that strong relationship between citizens and government. In most cases, it's the first point of contact that a person can see to say the government is providing for me as a citizen, and I can feel a relationship with my government.
But more importantly, it is the awareness of social protection and the importance of social protection by decision makers, by the people.
People don't know it's their right for governments to provide for them. And civil society organizations are in the best position to raise awareness amongst the vast majority of people as to the need for social protections.
It's been established now that for every $1 you spend on social protection, after some time you reap $16. So social protection is an investment.
We have, created critical mass of champions who will help us, who will support us outside the formal structure to ensure that these programs, are pushed.
The overall strategic objective of the ZAMFARA State Social Protection Policy is to improve the quality of lives of citizens of ZAMFARA State, especially the vulnerable. Through the support provided by CGDP, social protection intervention programs and activities in ZAMFARA State is progressively working to prevent citizens' exposure to shocks that could force them into extreme poverty.
Social protection, as emphasized, should not only just be for poor and vulnerable people, it should cover every stage of the life cycle. At this stage, for today, I might not need social protection because I have a decent job, I have a good education, and all that I want. But then I don't know what the future holds for me, and I might encounter the vicissitude of life in the near future and puts me in a situation whereby I'm unable to afford things I take for granted today. Should that such a situation arise, that's where the state steps in.
So this is not necessarily just for the poor and the vulnerable, but also those that are very susceptible to shocks. People that are working in the informal sector, they do have money, but if anything happens, quickly they fall into poverty.
Therefore, the development of social protection policy has become the starting point for the reforms aimed at lifting the people of the state above poverty line. It is envisaged that the policy will lead to enactment of appropriate laws which will provide the avenue for designing a plan that may require substantial outlay of social investment across various sectors of the state.
To get buy-in, a bill has been prepared.
With the advent of our romance with Save the Children, we now have policies, we have M&E frames.
A semi-autonomous body called the ZAMFARA State Social Protection Council is to be established for the implementation of social protection programs and interventions in the state. When this is achieved, it will guide social protection policy delivery and support the realization of the laudable social protection objectives of the state.
The council will be able to bring all social protection programs under one umbrella, and there will be no overlapping of an MDA doing the work of another MDA. I think there will be sanity.
The priority of government is sure that all those poverty indicators meant for ZAMFARA State are being reduced to the barest minimum. Hunger is eradicated. Government is always trying to create a conducive atmosphere that will bring a life of dignity for everyone in ZAMFARA State.
In a few years to come, probably 2 years or so, we intend to measure ourselves and see how far we have come in the area of social protection.